Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How Nonprofits Can Go Digital with Communications with Versaic. My name is Lauren Hogan. I'm a Regional Marketing Coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have Paul Miller from MGM Grow and Bill Santovsky from Cote joining us today. And just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over to Paul and Bill. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them. We'll save all of them until the end of the presentation, but don't hesitate to submit them as they come. Also, just a reminder that we'll send both some handouts and recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Paul and Bill, to get us started.
Well, thanks very much, Lauren. Really appreciate that. And thanks everybody for your attendance today. We'll try and keep this brief and immerse you into the world of digital communications and back office automation to try and give you some ideas on how you could start the digital transformation process for your nonprofit. So just a quick agenda, just a welcome that we've been through. The first issue is really about how can nonprofits go digital with customer communications, and topic one are the industry challenges. Now, before we say anything about that, we are definitely not experts in the nonprofit space. I mean, we've had some dealings with nonprofits and some relief agencies and some charities, but you guys are really the experts in your world. We tend to be kind of more expertise in sort of how this digital transformation could potentially work for your world. Bill's going to take us through a quick overview of Cote, and then finally the solution, and give you a couple of demonstrations of how this potentially could play out. So a little bit of background of me. I have a computer science degree, but really got started in sales and marketing roles for some American tech companies. I then started Australia's first all-digital ad agency for about a decade. Then I moved over to your wonderful country for 11 years, where I founded and managed 3 startups. So one was, 2 of them were US subsidiaries of international companies, and one was my own company, which was a VC-funded tech company. And I moved back to Australia in 2015, and I've been working with scale-ups and startups since then. And Bill, a very intelligent gentleman, is a 25-year industry expert. He's been involved in SaaS and digital transformation all those years. For the last 5 years, he's been focusing on how to advise service agencies how to reduce their OpEx costs, but also improve that customer experience through digitalization. So let's get started and talk about the industry challenge. So I was reading recently at the University of Notre Dame, I think that's how you pronounce it, that there were 8 major challenges facing nonprofits, and I'll just quickly go through each of those. So the first is growth. How do nonprofits continue to grow, making positive impacts and affecting change in their area of interest? Legitimacy. How do nonprofits overcome public skepticism and distinguish themselves from other nonprofits where perhaps their name is maybe not what your name is? It may not have the same kind of level of quality and integrity. Effectiveness. How do nonprofits measure and promote effectiveness by letting donors know what's actually been accomplished? How do you remain competitive? How do you make yourself stand out? How do you mobilize your supporters? Privacy is interesting because, as we know, there's continued developments about sovereign privacy and private information for individuals. How do you manage that? But how do you use it as you can, that will best serve your organization? Investment. How do you attract long-term investors and not just short-term donors? Use of funds. How can you maximize your efficiencies so that you have minimal waste and maximum capability of providing services? And then finally, cross-communication. How do you manage the process of providing services on the one hand, but then asking for donations on the other? We were talking to a relief agency recently in Australia, and they had major bushfire reliefs. But what they were also doing is unfortunately asking the same people that they were helping for, donations, and sometimes it didn't go down well and it was seen as insensitive. So how do you manage all those kinds of competing things? In terms of your customer interactions, they can be very time consuming. They can require human interaction. As a result, anything that involves a person is potentially error prone. And then also they require data and communication, which really requires double handling. You've got to get it from one form to another, and then, you've got to then get that information into a database or into your system, or however that works. So what we're looking for is this magical double rainbow, the solutions that not only save you time and money, but in the process, they actually lead to a better customer experience. And so not only are you helping out your organization by giving yourself some more up-to-date tools that cut the cost dramatically of doing certain things, but in the process, you're creating convenience, accuracy, and ease of use for your constituents. So really that's what we're looking for here, that double rainbow. And I can't claim credit to that comment. That actually came from Rob Johnson, and it was kind of an insightful comment, I thought. So what I'm going to do now is quickly jump out of this, go into a quick overview video, because I think that is going to give you the best indication of what this is all about. Right now, financial services companies are very focused on reducing the cost of service to their customers. Here's how we saved one of our customers more than 80% on their customer communications. How? Well, here's the story, but first, a little background. Visaic is a game-changing customer experience platform developed in Australia. Visaic is unique in that it fully automates both outbound and inbound CX channels. This creates a richer customer experience, but it also drives down communication costs. One of our customers wanted to run a campaign to print 100,000 letters to their members with a form on the back effectively asking, "You've got a low balance, do you want to opt in or out of some services?" People would have to tick a box, sign the form, shove it in an envelope and mail it back. With printing, postage, handling and inbound processing, this would normally cost them $250,000. We thought we could save them at least 70% and suggested a different approach. We asked, why don't we use secure, personalised landing pages? For those 40% of members with emails, we'd send them an email with a URL link. The company's CX team raised their eyebrows and said it couldn't be done in the time frame. But by working together using Visaic, we completed the whole job in just 5 days against an original project plan of 3 months. And the total project cost? We did the entire project for $25K, just 10% of the original $250,000 budget. But what about compliance and security, you might ask? Visaic tracks, traces, and stores every single communication. This gives your company the strongest possible audit trail and is fully APRA and ASIC compliant. And on the security side, we've been ISO 27001 security certified for more than 5 years. Maybe Visaic is worth a look for your next customer experience challenge. All right, so we'll jump back into the presentation again now. So some non-profit use cases that we thought might be relevant. So first of all, if you're providing education services such as charter schools, and you need a detailed application for admission and then also matriculation, what are the certification requirements? How does that get done? Healthcare. So if you've got people-based clinics, you can replace a clipboard full of data and actually get the individual to do it on the phone. And not only is it going to be more accurate, but it just saves that double handling. Complex applications for special needs or housing assistance. One of the things that I've been reading is that in this increasingly uncertain world that we live in, housing assistance has become the #1 driver for many non-profits providing service to their constituents. So how do you actually put that in the hands of the right people, the deserving people? And then finally, funding drives. We mentioned before about how there's a need to move more towards investors and also high net worth donors, rather than the little onesies and twosies that come along and donate their $50 or $100, in a one-off type situation. So one of the other things that's worthwhile just letting you know is that this is pure cloud. It's hosted in Azure in the United States, so there's no problems about data sovereignty. We mentioned before that it's got ISO 27001 security. It manages all the channels, both inbound and outbound. So that's everything from SMS, email, online forms, PDFs. There's a PDS in Australia called a product disclosure statement. I was getting a little confused. It adheres to the CCPA. And we mentioned before that it's got 100% track, trace, and auditability. And we've also got HIPAA and other compliance coming. So that's all sort of in the pipe and looking pretty positive. So one really, really simple example is that you could send an email to a previous donor. They click on a link. It takes them to a URL, a personalized URL. They sign in to validate themselves. And then it goes from being anonymized to suddenly personalized. So now this is talking to Steffi. It knows that last time that she gave $100, as you can see there. It just makes the whole thing a little bit more personalized, a little bit more intimate. You're talking to the individual and saying, hey, I know you. Another way that you could look at that is through mobile. It's exactly the same experience, but just in a different platform. Or you could take a completely different charity altogether, being something like Catholic Charities of USA. Similar concept. You're still saying, hey, Steffi, you're a big supporter of ours. We're kind of hoping you'll support us again. So that's just a really simple way of doing it. Now, we understand that you could do that with a combination of MailChimp, landing pages, Stripe to do the payment, and then also kind of some back-end CRM integration to actually populate the data. But already you're talking about integrating 4 different systems. The difference is that Passaic is a web-based system that's completely one platform. It's already fully integrated just out of the box. So you don't need to worry about plumbing those different systems and worrying about making sure that the information and the data is kept up to date. So I'm going to hand it over to Bill now. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and then Bill is going to take over. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I'll just switch screens. Can everyone see that? So look, the next topic.
Bill, we can't see it.
Oh, sorry, worked in reversal. My apologies. Is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry for the hiccup. So thanks, Paul. So look, I'm going to go through 2 topics here. The first topic is just to give you a couple of slides to introduce Cote Software Solutions. We are an Australian SaaS provider. Oops. We're an Australian sort of SaaS provider, a software company. We've been going since 2009. Started as an independent advisory and professional services company, but these days we've sort of through our Visaic cloud platform, we sort of specialize in improving customer engagement and streamlining business processes at the same time. And that's really, sort of striving to ensure that, we're helping empower organizations to go digital and try and escape the legacy constraints and all of the cost associated with a lot of the integration that Paul just mentioned before. So when we've keep on building enhancements out of Visaic, we're just trying to extend the breadth of capability to ensure that we demonstrate value and provide increased control and flexibility to deliver speed and agility. In terms of where we serve, obviously we're headquartered out of Australia. We've got some service offices in Singapore and through our global partner DXC in Irvine in Los Angeles. And we're about to set up an office in Delaware. We've got some clients in Maryland that we're servicing at the moment. So we've got some growth in that particular area. That's quite exciting. So in terms of where we sit in your digital ecosystem, if you have a look here, across the top, you'll have the various channels that you're interacting with in terms of the citizens and your constituents. And that could be through campaigns, e-forms, across the customer journey from attracting and onboarding through to, maintaining activities and potentially retaining those individuals across those different channels. You're going to have a web experience platforms in terms of your website, and you're going to have technology stacks like Sitecore and other bits and pieces. You may have member portals or mobile apps, or even loyalty type platforms as well to help service that web experience. Moving down, you've got your business experience platforms, and you're going to have your lead gen tools there and your CRM tools. And where we sit is really sort of on, connected to your core platforms, in that customer experience management space where we help to help service and streamline customer interactions across all of the interactions. And these are typically, looking at the customer journey end to end, from the early days where there's an application and the welcome pack through to regulated comms. And then from a maintain and service activities, we're talking about the generation of statements, bills, invoices, and those sorts of things. And then when we look at retain customer activities, we're looking at marketing campaigns and customer communications, all linked into those sort of core front of house systems, CRM systems, and also back-end platforms that manage a lot of those service functions. So as Paul said, our product, if you have a look at that customer experience space, it's quite complex. And if you look at the end-to-end work process from managing requirements through setting up templates, testing those templates, composing and just delivering those messages and those interactions. From a compliance point of view, you need to archive those. And then there's an inbound call to action or response management. And it takes several tools to help orchestrate that process end to end. Some of these you may know, some of you don't. I'm not about to rattle them through, but there are a plethora of tools, and typically it does lead to a very complex, high cost to serve environment that we believe that the Visaic platform can help to streamline. And the way that I'd like to do that is not get too much into technology, but maybe just delve a little bit deeper with some examples to show you how the platform works and how it could be applied to some of those use cases that Paul mentioned. So in terms of the solution, Paul mentioned obviously a lot of the outreach donorship type campaigns. And what we are proposing is taking those outreaches to the next level and really providing a two-way digital interactions and combining that outreach with an integrated call to action. At the same time, we'd like to harmonize the customer experience and the employee experience through to digitization, so that we know that if there is a donor drive or a grant application or a volunteer application, then you need to look at the back end processes to help provision those services and connect the citizen to the services that they've asked for. So we actually look at both sides of the fence and serve both masters. So from that point of view, to try and overcome and harmonize, we're looking at making sure that we look at the customer and the employee journey at the same time. We do that through that process, business process automation, and having things in the cloud just enables that to provide that speed and agility to do that quickly without the expense. Best way to demonstrate this is to have a look at some examples. Paul did show you that quick video. I probably will take that to the next level and just show you some of the constructs of that particular campaign. So the problem here was we had a financial services company that needed to reach out to their customers with that low investment balance And the call to action here was they needed them to confirm that they wanted life insurance. If we look at the process, right, a traditional physical process would involve generating a letter and a form. If it was a big volume, you may need to generate a brief and send it to your print house or your mail house to do that. Then they would print and dispatch that, so the member would receive their postal pack. And at the moment, we're possibly at week 3. The member would complete the post pack. They would sign it, send it back, and it either goes back to your mail room, which need to then be opened, sorted. If you're lucky, you may have some sophisticated scanning and OCRing to reduce that manual intervention. And eventually, you need to update that call to action in your core system. We're talking weeks there. This is just an historical time lapse that a physical channel would need. If we do a direct comparison with what going digital actually means, it means that we can generate and send an email with a personalized landing page with a link pretty quickly. If you allow an hour or so for that person to receive that email, although that's instant, a customer would open the email, review the details, and select to opt in or opt out of the service that you're trying to validate. And then you send them a confirmation email of the action that they've done, and the process is automatically updated in your core system, providing that automated closed loop. So if you have a look at, okay, what does it look like from an operational perspective? What is the setup? And there's really 2 things that you need to sort of set up. One is the outreach, setting up an email template. Here, the email notification is quite light. So it's just here asking, dear, title, surname, please review your cover. And there's a link, disguised through a button there with some privacy information. You design that outreach. You also then design your call to action. Now, this is that personalized landing page, and we recognize that people are time poor, and with application forms, it's not ideal to ask one of your customers to provide the same information that you already know. So what we've done here is just focusing on section 2, where we're asking them to confirm that they want that insurance cover, and then repeating the information there from a validation perspective. So this form replaces the need for a physical application form. So once you develop those 2 parts, the outreach and the call to action landing page, the way you run it is simply just run the campaign. You drag your file in this area and you upload, and you can run it right then and there, or you can obviously schedule to run at a designated time. And then when you run that, from an output perspective, in terms of the end customer experience, the recipient receives the email. They're instructed to review their account, and they click, and we can also support customer authentication, as Paul demonstrated in his earlier slides, where you may use their member ID or their customer's date of birth to validate. And once they sort of log in, they're presented with their personalized landing page here, and with their information already personalized, and they just click on the call to action and they hit submit. And then once that all happens, they get a confirmation email back of their action. And the other side, I mentioned that CX and EX harmonization. And what we try to do here is to provide your internal staff with real-time data feeds, so you can see the information of when people actually accepted that cover. And then they can download that data, every day or whatever the required frequency, to ensure that it's uploaded into your system. We could use an API to push that through as well. So that's a very simple call to action. The call to action is just confirming your insurance. We've also done another sort of proof of concept with a US government relief agency, and that's a more complex one that I just wanted to walk you through, just to probably show you a little bit more around a more complex CX experience. The agency's problem was there was the government, as part of COVID, was providing significant financial relief to organisations. This immediately overnight sort of made the phones ring quite quickly. There was a significant influx in calls. There was a tenfold increase in call volumes. They had limited inbound channels and predominantly serviced their customers through phone, limited self-serve capability through their website, limited data integration with the lenders, not to the scale that they were used to anyway. And this sort of caused significant delays in distributing the relief package. So the agency was sort of in an immediate need to provide that relief to the call centers by trying to provide an immediate self-serve capability with instant notifications and regular messaging to avoid people calling the call center to find out where their loan application was at. And they needed something that was quite streamlined, fully digital around that administration process. And it had to have strong compliance given the financial nature of the application. So they needed full track and trace of all activities. So what we did there, they'll go to their agency website, they'll click on the link, and they'll be presented with a web form, which was the application page for like a paycheck protection program. They'll fill in their information on that form, which will just be the minimal information to kick off the registration process. They'll click on submit, and then the first thing that happens here, they're presented with a confirmation page to inform them of the actual process and where they are in that process. And they're immediately advised that, thank you for registering. You'll receive a message advising you of the next steps. 5 minutes later, they'll be presented with an email or an SMS, depending upon what their preferred channel of communication would be. So if it's emailed, we sort of send an email that looks something like this. And there'll be a URL, a unique URL that was that personalized landing page to take them to their application. If they prefer to do that on their mobile phone, same sort of thing. They'll click on that link and they're presented with the same information, would be grayed out, but they'll be asked to then perform a self-assessment, which is the key information that would feed into their ability to seek that relief package. So they enter the type of business they are, their monthly payroll, and the purpose and number of employees as well. And then they'll click submit, and then they're advised that they're now in step 2 of a seven-step process. So with these sorts of things, whether it be a simple call to action, a simple checkbox, or this particular relief agency, what they shared in terms of benefits was that 24/7 self-serve, an instant response through that digital capability, significant reduction in costs. We saw 80+% on the first one, and quite a significant change, cost saving on the other one in terms of while it ran for a small period. Improved visibility, improved compliance, and as Paul said, with the double rainbow, that CX and EX experience makes sure that although we focus on time and cost savings, but making it easier, simpler, faster for both the customer and the employee is quite important. So from the areas, again, from where the us trying to apply where we believe would be some relevance in your areas, when you have those donation drives or there's an influx of service provisioning, trying to look at some self-service mechanisms to reduce that call center demand, cut the cost of high volume or time-consuming manual tasks and interactions, and implement fully digital optimized and automated CX processes to ensure that you deliver an end-to-end solution that is full closed loop. And then overall, you're looking at streamlining your customer experience, self-serve interactions, and to do that in real time at a time where your citizens or constituents are able to do that. So again, these are sort of the areas that we feel would be relevant in terms of the non-for-profits. From our point of view, we probably open up the floor for any Q&A, and we're just sort of trying to keep the session short, given the time slot is quite a tough one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul and Bill, for that great presentation. Thank you everyone for joining. It doesn't look like we have any questions that have come through at the moment, but we are going to be doing follow-up, so we would be happy to answer questions then as well. And then just a reminder, we are going to be sending out the slides and recording to this webinar within 24 hours after it has concluded. So Paul and Bill, thank you so much for being here, and that'll conclude our webinar today.
Great,
Thanks so much, Lauren, and thank you to the attendees. And yeah, thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Bye.